Alright, this is section 2.4 and we're going to do some more factoring with polynomials. We've already done some factoring, so you should be getting better at this, but there are a few patterns that we haven't discussed yet, and that's when we have the sum of two cubes. So if we have something here that can be cube rooted and something here that can be cube rooted, and there's a plus sign, you're going to follow exactly what this pattern tells you to do. So down here we have x to the third power plus 8. And I know that I can take the cube root of x to the third, and I'll just show you that. And I know the cube root of 8 is 2, and you can get that in your calculator as well. So this becomes my a, and the 2 becomes my b, and I'm going to follow exactly what they have here. So a plus b, that's x plus 2. A squared, so x squared. And then it tells you to multiply a and b together, so 2 times x is 2x. And then b squared, so 2 squared is 4. And so that's it. That is factored and you're done. So here are here's another pattern, and it's the same exact thing except for it's the difference of two cubes, and that just means that you have a minus sign here. And over here it does look almost identical except for this right here is an addition sign. So I'm going to go ahead and just throw in all my symbols, and then that just means I have to fill in the missing pieces. So we have to look at each individual thing. Can you take the cube root of 8x to the third? And the answer is yes. It's 2x. Cube root of 8 is 2, and the cube root of x to the third is x. And then can you take the cube root of 1? Yes, you can. It's 1. That one's easy. So now we just fill this in. We have a and b, so a goes here, and b goes here. A squared would be 2 squared and x squared, so that's 4x squared. Remember, you have to square the whole thing. And then we multiply a and b together, so 2x times 1 is 2x. And the last thing we have to do is square the b, so 1 squared is still 1. Now we're done factoring it. So here's two examples. One of them is just like what I showed you. The first one, x to the third plus 27. So can you take the square root, or I'm sorry, the cube root of x to the third? The answer is yes, it is x. Can you take the cube root of 27? And you can. In your calculator, if you were to type in math, hit the math button, and you scroll down to the cube root symbol, you can hit that and then punch in 27, and when you do, the answer comes up on your screen. So that answer should be 3. Okay, so now we just have to figure out which pattern are we going to use? The difference of two cubes or the sum? And the answer, and I'll flip back so you can see it. If you start out with plus right here, we're obviously going to use the sum of two cubes. So we have plus minus plus. So I'm going to fill that in. Plus minus plus. And you can look back in your notes of how to do this by looking at what goes here and here. But a goes here and b goes here. Then we take the a and square it. Then we multiply a and b together, and then you take the b and square it, and you're done. All right, now on the second one, you notice that we don't have any cube roots, or cubes going on here. And so what we need to do is pull out something that they both have in common. And what I'm going to do is I'm first going to check to see if 16 and 250 have a common multiple. So I'm going to start with the highest number there. So 16 divided by 16 is 1. And then 250 divided by 16 is a decimal, so that doesn't work. So now I'm going to think of something else that goes into 16, and the next highest would be an 8. So 16 divided by 8, that's 2. And 250 divided by 8 is a decimal. So that one doesn't work as well. So now let's try 4. 16 divided by 4 is 4. And 250 divided by 4 is a decimal, 62.5. So that also doesn't work. So when we do this, we're going to have to do the next one. So 2. 16 divided by 2 is 8. 250 divided by 2 is 125. So this one works. So the highest common multiple that 16 and 250 have is 2. So I'm going to pull that out. And then I also know that each one of these has at least 2 u's. So I'm going to pull out the u squared. And then I'm going to put everything back in the parentheses, what would be left over. So 2 times what would give me 16? 8. And if I have u squared, what would go here to make u to the 5th? U to the 3rd, because 2 plus 3 is 5. And then 250 divided by 2 was 125, so 125 goes here. And we already have the u squared out here, so that's all set. Now if you notice, inside here we have something that could possibly be the difference or sum of 2 cubes. And of course it would be difference because there's a minus sign. You just have to check to see, is there a cube root of 8? And in the example problem we did before, we already know the answer is yes. But is there a cube root of 125? So if you push math and you scroll down to number 4 and punch in 125, the answer is 5. So there is a cube root of 125. So we're going to use that equation, and the only difference is we're going to have 2u squared out in front. So this is the difference. So again, if I flip back, I have minus plus plus. So minus plus plus. And I do want to form an A. We have to take the cube root of 8u to the 3rd, which is 2u. And cube root of 125, we found out in our calculator, was 5. So now our A goes here, and our B goes here. Then we have to take A and square it. Remember, you square the entire thing over here, so it'd be 4u squared. Now we multiply A and B together, so 10u. And last, we have to take 5 and square it, which would be 25. And now we're done. All right, there's also a way to factor when you have 4 different terms here. So if you have more than 3, you cannot factor like we normally have been. When there's 4, we're going to group these together. So we're going to take the first 2 and just put parentheses around it. And then we're going to take the second 2 and put parentheses around it. And we're going to factor each one separately. So if we take x to the 3rd minus 2x squared, and we factor that, I know that they both share an x squared. And what would be left over is x minus 2. All right, now the next one we have, and we want to put this negative sign down here. So now we have 9x plus 18, and we need to factor that. They really don't have a common x, so what we're going to do is we're going to pull out what common number they share as a multiple. So 9 goes into 18, so I'm going to pull out a 9. And what would go next would be x. But remember here, we have negative 9 times what will give us positive 18? So it has to be negative 2. Okay. Now at this point, you want to check something. If this area right here matches this area over here, then you know you're doing it right. For some reason, if you didn't do it, and if you didn't do it where they matched, then you have to go back and redo something. So if you get these two things to match up, then you're all set and you're ready for the next step. So the next step would be, we're going to just take x squared minus 9 and put that together. And then because they both share an x minus 2, I'm going to write just one of them. Okay, and now we need to look at each individual thing here and make sure they're factored all the way out. And if you notice, x squared minus 9 is the difference of two squares, then we need to keep that going. So we have plus minus. The square root of x squared is x. And the square root of 9 is 3. So this x squared minus 9 became x minus 3, x plus 3. That's factored all the way out now. And x minus 2 over here is already done. You cannot do anything else with that. So that goes on the ending. And this all is your answer. And that is factored. Now when we have 3 terms, as you notice we have 3 terms here, and they all share a common x, we can also pull that out as well. So I'm also noticing that 4, 20, and 24 all have a common multiple of 4. So I'm going to pull the 4 out. And they all have at least an x squared in it. This has 4, this 6, and this has 2. So we can only take the least that they have. Now we're going to put everything they have left over. So 4x squared times what here will give us 4x to the 6th. Well, we only need 4 more of those x's, so 2 plus 4 is 6. Now we move on to the next one. 4x squared times what will give us negative 20x to the 4th? And that answer is negative 5x squared. So 4 times negative 5 is negative 20. X squared times x squared is x to the 4th. And the last one, 4 times what will give us 24. And x squared times what will give us x squared. Well, we already have x squared, so that's done. Okay, now that we have that done, you need to make sure that this is all the way factored out. And the way to check that is to go through and find factors of 6 to see if it adds up to 5. So I'm going to do that. And as you can tell, 2 and 3 add up to 5, but we need negative 5. So as long as I make them both negative, that still will multiply to give me a positive and add up to a negative. So this trinomial that we had now becomes 2 binomials with the 4x squared out in front. So now we just put the x minus 2 and x minus 3. But see how this is an x to the 4th? It doesn't just go to x and x. It's actually x squared and x squared. And then the last thing you want to check is to make sure that this x squared minus 2 and x squared minus 3 is factored all the way. And that can be the difference of 2 squares, like we did in the last problem. So can you take the square root of x squared? Yes. Can you take the square root of 2 and get a whole number? No. So this one is done. Same thing over here. We can take the square root of x squared, but we can't take the square root of 3 and get a whole number. So this is also done. This is now factored, this answer here.